$40 a month, that is what the capsules cost me. Every month for years. Lined up in their amber bottle, on the kitchen counter, like a toll. I never thought to stop paying. My doctor said my omega-3 levels were low, handed me a recommendation, and I walked into a pharmacy, buying exactly what the shelf told me to. I swallowed them each morning with water, and I never once asked where the oil came from or what factory rendered it. How many miles of cold chain stood between me and the fish that supposedly donated its fat for my cardiovascular health. I just paid and paid again and again the next month, because that is the architecture you live inside without seeing it. A doctor identifies a deficiency, a corporation packages a solution, a subscription auto renews, and your body becomes a monthly revenue line, just a number on someone else's spreadsheet. You aren't a patient in that exchange, you're a customer. Locked into a dependency loop, dressed up as healthcare. And the thing that finally cracked that loop open for me was not a better supplement or a cheaper brand or some online hack. It was a $2 packet of seeds I ordered on a whim because I wanted to cook something I had eaten in a restaurant. Something I had simply mistaken for decoration. I didn't know when I tore that packet open and pressed those tiny seeds into the corner of a raised bed that I was about to walk out of a system that had been extracting money from me. Exchange for a nutrient, one that grows freely in soil, renews itself every spring without replanting, and has been feeding entire civilizations for 2,000 years, while I stood in a pharmacy aisle comparing milligram counts on plastic bottles. That is the part no one tells you. Not that you lack discipline, or your garden failed because you did something wrong, but that the entire framework you operate inside, the supplements, the grocery markup, the cold chain, the monthly debit, is engineered so that the answer is always another purchase. The soil under your feet contains the capacity to close that loop permanently, and the system you trust has zero incentive to mention it. I found that out by accident standing over a patch of self-sown seedlings. I never planted them, realizing the crop had come back on its own, while I was still logging into an auto-ship account to reorder capsules. Made from fish I would never see, caught in waters I would never visit, processed in a facility I could not name. 3 years of that patch, regenerating itself without a single input from me, and the math became impossible to ignore. The system I had trusted was not solving my deficiency, it was monetizing it, and the plant that broke me out of it had been sitting in Asian kitchens, wrapped around grilled meat, chopped into soups, eaten fresh at nearly every meal, hiding in plain sight, while Western nutrition science spent decades pretending that the only viable omega-3 source swam in the ocean. Here is the thing that made me angry, and I mean genuinely angry, not internet outrage angry, but the slow burn you feel when you realize you've been paying for something that was supposed to grow itself. 64% alpha-linolenic acid in a single seed. That number sat in a 1991 research paper from India for over 3 decades. While I handed my credit card to a supplement company every month, flaxseed gets $40. Shelf space at Whole Foods for 53%. Think about what modern gardening actually sells you. You walk into a nursery, they hand you a bag of sterilized potting mix, a bottle of liquid feed, and a schedule. You're buying dead substrate and then renting life back into it, one dropper at a time. Every spring, samey transaction. The soil under that bag has no fungal network, because it was baked clean in a factory. A Korean royal physician named Hojun spent 15 years compiling the Dongui Bogum, finished in 1613, documenting 17 medical applications for this single species. 500 million people across East Asia eat it every week. Not as medicine, not as a supplement, but as food that simply appears at the table because it grows without intervention in any patch of ground left undisturbed. During the Edo period, 90% of Japanese farming households cultivated perilla, cultivating it simultaneously for food, for medicine, and for lamp oil. 1 plant, 3 functions, 0 purchased inputs, and the leaf itself carries 230 milligrams of calcium per 100 grams, protein levels above spinach, vitamin A, concentrations that dwarf most cultivated greens, and rosmarinic acid in quantities no other culinary herb on earth can match. All of that, self-seeding, permanent and free, buried under a supply chain that needed you to believe. That omega-3 only comes from a factory that renders fish into capsules. The system did not fail to discover Perilla. There is a law written into the biology of certain plants that no corporation can patent, no supply chain can gatekeep, and no laboratory ever invented. It was running for centuries before anyone in a white coat measured it. Japanese chefs placing a serrated purple leaf on raw fish were not just decorating a plate, they were activating a food safety protocol older than refrigeration itself. That isn't folk wisdom. That is a biological mechanism, so effective it survived half a millennium of daily use before a single peer-reviewed paper confirmed what every sushi counter already knew. The molecule responsible, rosmarinic acid, physically inhibits the enzymes that your body uses to launch allergic responses. Clinical trials measured a 50% reduction in allergy symptoms among the people who were consuming it. A separate Korean study documented a 23% drop in post-meal blood sugar for diabetic patients given the extract. Another compound found almost exclusively in this species, perillaldehyde, showed tumor inhibiting behavior in laboratory conditions. These are not fringe claims buried in obscure journals. They are published, replicated findings that simply never receive the amplification that a $4 billion fish oil industry buys every fiscal quarter. And here is the part that should make the mechanism click in your head like a lock turning. Search any major medical database for fish oil and omega-3, and you'll pull up over 15,000 studies. Search for Perilla and omega-3, and you'll find roughly 400. That ratio has nothing to do with which source works better. It has everything to do with which source requires factories, extraction equipment, purification columns, gelatin capsules, cold shipping containers, and quarterly purchase cycles to reach your bloodstream. A plant whose seeds can be cold pressed in a shed with a $100 hand tool, whose leaves self-seed every autumn without replanting, whose biology hands you the same fatty acid profile without a middleman, and generates no recurring revenue for anyone. So the research money never arrived. The unified Western name never arrived. Koreans call it kakanip, Japanese call it shiso, Chinese call it zisu, and botanists filed it under Perilla frutescens, which means 4 separate encounters in 4 separate languages, and not one of them stuck long enough to build familiarity in a single English language cookbook. That isn't an accident of linguistics. That is what happens when a self-replicating, self-pressing, zero-input, omega-3 source threatens the economics of an entire supplement aisle. Here is the move that changes everything, and it is so simple, it'll feel like cheating. You don't plant this crop every year. You plant it once, and then you step back and let the biology do what biology has been doing for millennia, without your calendar reminders or your seed starting trays or your grow lights burning electricity in March. You press a few seeds onto bare moist soil in late spring. You water them for maybe 2 weeks while they wake up, and then you just walk away. That is the entire input. No feeding schedule, no staking, no pest spray. Think about what you aren't doing. You aren't tilling, you aren't amending, you aren't rotating, you aren't buying transplants in plastic cell packs from a garden center every April. A single plant left to flower in autumn throws between 1,000 and 4,000 seeds into the surrounding soil, and 85% of those seeds are viable. They fall. They overwinter in the leaf litter you never raked. They germinate the following spring without you lifting a finger. The patch expands. It thickens. It becomes a permanent feature of your ground, the same way clover colonizes a neglected lawn, except this one feeds you omega-3 fatty acids, fresh greens from spring through frost, and dried tea leaves all winter long. Picture this happening in my own raised bed over 3 seasons. The first year I had 6 plants spaced 12 inches apart, in a corner I had basically forgotten about. The second year I had 40 volunteers I never seeded, never watered, and never even asked for. By the 3rd autumn I was collecting enough seed heads to press oil, with a hand crank press that cost me less than 2 months, of the fish oil capsules I used to buy. One harvest replaced an entire year of supplementation. The press sits on my kitchen counter. The seeds dry on a tray by the window. The whole operation takes an afternoon in October, and then it is done until next October, and the plants are already out there reseeding themselves for the following year without a single instruction from me. This is what I mean. The system works harder when you work less. Every time you intervene with a rototiller, you shred the fungal networks that are quietly delivering phosphorus and moisture to your plants for free. Every time you rake leaves off bare soil, you remove the exact mulch layer those seeds need, just to overwinter and germinate. Every time you pull volunteers because they look like weeds, you're dismantling the self-replicating infrastructure that the plant is trying to build on your behalf. The counterintuitive truth is that neglect, the right kind of neglect, is the most productive thing you can offer. Leave the flower spikes standing, leave the leaf litter where it falls. Let the ground do the work it already knows how to do, and what you get back is a patch that grows more productive every single year, with zero annual cost, zero annual labor, zero dependence on any supply chain that could break tomorrow. And that shift from annual effort to permanent yield isn't just a gardening trick. It is the difference between renting your nutrition from a corporation and owning it outright in the soil beneath your feet. Picture the next satisfying disruption event. Doesn't matter what triggers it. A port strike, a diesel shortage, a freak frost that wipes out California's leafy greens for a season. You've seen the footage before. Bare shelves, long lines, people arguing over the last wilted bag of spinach, marked up to $9. Now picture yourself walking past all of that, out your back door, to a patch of deep purple, green leaves that nobody planted this year because nobody needed to. The plants decided on their own, the way they decided last year, and the year before. That because a single packet of seeds you buried 3 seasons ago has become a self-perpetuating colony tuned to your exact soil chemistry, your frost dates, your rainfall pattern. Korean hill villages have run this same experiment for 10 generations on the same ground from one original sowing. That isn't folklore, that is documented reproductive behavior of a plant that treats your neglect as permission to thrive. Now stand that image next to what actually happens when you let those last few plants drop seed in October, and you just walk away. You don't clear the bed, you don't till, you do nothing until spring, when dozens of volunteers push through the mulch on their own schedule, already adapted, already stronger than their parents, because they germinated in the specific microbial environment of your ground. By midsummer, you're pulling leaves for wraps and salads. The plant was never hidden. The seeds are available right now from any specialist supplier for a few dollars, and increasingly from the mainstream catalogs. One purchase, one season of establishment, and then it is done. A permanent nutritional asset written into your soil, the way equity is written into a deed.